For the lead up to our very special first ever Halloween edition of The Nerve, we are exploring issues of the paranormal and the unexplained. And I'm so happy that Sam Vaknin, one of your favorites and mine, has agreed to join us to talk about the very human impulse, no matter how educated one may be, no matter what a rationalist one may be, to search for greater meaning. Sam, as we know, is an author of multiple books. He is a professor at CIAPS, professor of psychology. We are so happy to welcome you back, Sam. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm okay. Thank you.
You're coming to us from
I'm in
Paris, I understand.
Yes, I'm in
I love
Paris.
your very Parisian backdrop. I'm very jealous. How is it over there?
Well, it's like intermittent reinforcement, hot and cold.
Yeah, you're not missing much. It's the same we here on the East Coast are having the same. I'm so glad you were up for this discussion. I wasn't sure you would be, because I would bet as a man of letters, you would consider yourself a rationalist.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that you can talk to us a little bit about, it's a large subject, but could you speak to us about, since the dawn of humanity, it seems we have searched for greater meaning, whether it's in the cosmos or invented gods of the Greeks and Romans. Can you sort of talk to us about the origins of this?
Yes, I think the problem is that logic and rationality fail to provide meaning and hope. So when you're confronted, for example, with grief, when you're confronted with loneliness and isolation, existential, rationality is not going to help you much. Logic is going to lead you nowhere. You need other things. And these other things, regrettably, are irrational. And they are grouped under the label supernatural or paranormal or even religious. These are beliefs that are not grounded in either reality or in facts. These are counterfactual beliefs. But their strength is the narrative. They provide a narrative. Because they provide a narrative, they become organizing and explanatory principles. They allow us to make sense of life and reality, to imbue them with meaning, however artificial, and to provide some sense of direction, purpose. So we feel more at home in the universe with these kinds of explanations and stories and narratives, and we feel more at home. Logic and rationality are alienating. They render us strangers in reality.
In what way? In what way do they render us strangers?
They're neutral. They're objective. And the main lesson of rationality and logic is that the universe is essentially random and it does not care about us. There's no element of caring. It's inexorable. The universe is inexorable. It's a machine. And that makes us cogs and wheels in this machine.
It's so interesting you say that, because one of the most common concepts of the modern age, and you hear this all the time, particularly in American daytime television, is the universe. The universe has guided you here. The universe has heard you. The universe has made it so. The universe has become sort of this plug-in for the secular notion of an all-seeing God. Why do you think that's happening right now?
It's a combination of grandiosity and magical thinking. Mm-hmm. The belief that the universe cares sufficiently about you to guide you. I find it delusional, to use a British understatement. And also it involves magical thinking. Magical thinking is the infantile belief that your thoughts or wishes, if they're strong enough, powerful enough, can affect change in reality.
Oh, this is the other concept we now call secularly manifesting.
Yes.
You wish hard enough for it, it will become true.
Law of attraction, The Secret, all these things. They imply that your internal reality has external outcomes, that by wishing or by thinking or by willing, you could affect change in reality. You could rearrange it to cater to your needs and promote your ambitions and so on and so forth. But with your kind permission, I would like to delve a bit deeper into the psychology of the paranormal.
Oh, yes, please.
If
I would
if you
love
wish.
it.
Okay.
Sam, I would love nothing
I
more.
thi-
You're speaking my
well,
language. Let's do it. I mean it. I'm not being facetious. Please go.
first of all, historically, the distinction between normal and paranormal
Mm-hmm.
would have shocked men of science well into the 19th century.
Okay.
They didn't see any difference. They didn't see any difference or any distinction
Between the
between
normal
normal
and the
and paranormal.
paranormal.
Yeah. I mean, Newton was an astrologer and an alchemist,
I did
for
not know
example.
that. I did not know that.
Yeah, he spent most of his career as an alchemist and astrologer, actually. Physics
Wow.
was a byline, a hobby.
Wow.
And this is only one example. Well into the 19th century, there was a separation between science and all the rest. And both realms of existence were considered equally valid and equally important to the meaningful and full and rich life of an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Only with the rise of scientism, which is the religion of science, only with the rise of scientism did we come to disparage and kind of mock and ridicule the paranormal, the religious, the irrational, as if they have no role in human life, or as if their only role is to corrupt the human mind. That is expressly untrue. Religion, parapsychology, the paranormal, the supernatural, spiritualism, I mean, the esoteric, all these are there because they're needed. And they're needed because they cater to specific psychological functions and needs. Having said that, they reflect highly specific psychological processes. First of all, anyone who believes in the paranormal has some kind of difficulty to tell apart internal objects from external objects. There's a confusion between what's happening internally and what's happening externally. And this, of course, is why we see apparitions and ghosts. They exist in our mind, but we perceive them as external. This is an element in psychotic disorders. People with psychosis have this problem.
So Sam, are you saying that anybody who says they have had a brush with the paranormal, who has had a brush with the unexplained, has experienced some manner of temporary psychosis?
No, what I'm saying is that certain types of paranormal experiences reflect a problem, a confusion between internal and external objects, and that is also a clinical feature of psychotic disorders. It doesn't mean that these people are psychotic.
No, I'm not saying they are psychotic, but it sounds like you're saying it can be a temporary situational phenomenon.
It's a temporary break with reality, absolutely, yes. It's a valid experience. The person is not lying. They did see a ghost. But we know that this is a hallucination. An apparition is a hallucination. We know that there is a breakdown of the boundary between external reality and internal reality, which leads to the confusion of the two territories.
Sam, let me ask you a question, because this is a case that we are going to talk about and delve into on our Halloween episode. And this is an isolated case, but there is a documented story and video, audio, literature, what have you, of a young girl, I believe in the 1980s. So this is before the internet and before one could have their fantasies augmented by such a thing, who at about the age of 5 years old reported playing with a couple of men who were in their 50s. She could name them. She could explain what they looked like. Nobody else saw them. It turned out these men were deceased. They had lived in the house next door. She had all of the factual biographical details of their lives correct. How would you explain such a thing? Can science explain such a thing?
I don't know the particular case, but I can make two general comments.
Okay.
Most children have imaginary friends.
Right.
These imaginary friends disappear in adulthood, but they fulfill very important roles They're known as transitory objects. These imaginary friends allow the child to develop social skills and to feel protected and safe in environments which are less than stable, and so on and so forth. But most children have them. That's point number one. Point number two, there have been multiple projects in academia and in science where we have attempted to study exactly such stories over decades. And I'm not talking about a single project. We have Stephenson's project. We have the Princeton laboratory. We have, I can enumerate at least 20 major projects, which lasted for 30 years. Each of these projects has studied anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 cases. In the totality of this endeavor, we succeeded to come across a single unexplained case.
Really?
One. All the others.
Can you talk a little bit about what that one unexplained case entailed?
Yeah, that was a case described by Stephenson, who was a serious and rigorous academic.
Year?
Stephenson was in the United States, yes. And Stephenson
60s, okay.
I'm sorry?
1960s, you said.
Yes.
Okay.
And Stephenson described the case of a young girl who came up with a recollection, perfect recollection, of her previous life in India. There was an American young girl, yeah? A previous life in India. She described her relatives, she named them, she described her house, and she described a buried treasure, a treasure she herself had buried prior to her demise. She died in childbirth, I think. And then the only way to verify this was to travel to India. And so the whole circus traveled to India. And they found, she named them correctly. They found the house. And they found the buried treasure exactly where she pointed it out. And that's the only unexplained case in the entire history of the field, which is now at least 150 years old.
I would say, though, that case is beyond tantalizing.
Well, that's precisely what people like William James and
I was going to get to William James with you, exactly.
Precisely what William James and Arthur Conan Doyle said. These were hyper-rational people. William James is arguably the father of psychology. And Arthur
Let's
Conan
just
Doyle.
explain to anyone who may be unfamiliar with William James, brother of the famous novelist, 19th century novelist Henry James. He was a physician. He taught at Harvard. He was an expert in anatomy, a rationalist who later in life wrote one of the most famous books on the subject up until that point, called The Variety of Religious Experience. And I remember reading that book maybe in my 20s and thinking this was blowing my mind, because I felt like I was experiencing a rationalist working through his own resistance to the idea of other dimensions or other understandings of human nature that were beyond our own recognition.
There's also James, the father of psychology, who is an even more interesting case. And he suggested that paranormal phenomena are real.
Are real.
He developed this belief or belief system following the death of his only son, Herman. And very often, these conversions on the way to Damascus take place after a period of grief, in the wake of some grief. So we have Arthur Conan Doyle, who lost his son in the First World War, the father of Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And Arthur Conan Doyle became a spiritualist in the wake of this experience, the loss of his son. So did James. And James said that if there is a general maxim that all swans are white, and then there's a single black swan, that is enough to falsify the maxim. Now, I'm mentioning this because you asked me about this single case.
Yeah.
This single case has not been explained. And I find it difficult to think of a way to explain it, to be honest. And in itself is sufficient to falsify the paradigm that the paranormal is wrong.
Thank you. I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to say it. I was thinking the exact same thing.
It's a curious case which challenges many, many underlying assumptions regarding many, many things.
Well, I just want to say you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, and I love this phrase, the religion of scientism. The
Yeah.
idea that scientism, this idea that we explain everything through known laws of physics and medicine, biology, the known world, is in itself a religion, even if said adherents consider themselves atheists. No, no, no. They do belong to a religion. I want to show a clip of the very famous neurologist Oliver Sacks, who has since passed, being asked about what he thinks about the paranormal and the idea of dualism, the idea that the body houses the soul and those two things live together for a time but are separate entities that divide upon death. Let's take a look.
Do you find, I mean, is there a mind-body dichotomy, or are we just one set of physical organisms?
I feel strongly that we are just one set, and I think the dichotomy is partly because we don't know enough about the body and its wonder, which is what Spinoza was saying in 1650. Many physiologists are dualists. Sherrington, who was the greatest physiologist of all, was a complete dualist, and but I tend to think that there will be one day a biology of consciousness and of sensibility which will not be reductive, and will allow all the fullness of life as we know it.
And will explain all?
Will illuminate all. There's something always reductive about explanation.
So I'll talk about what struck me about that interview, and then I'll give it to you. Oliver Sacks, indisputably a brilliant man. If you haven't seen Awakenings, that was his discovery, and his research is struggling, to my mind. He is saying, I absolutely am not a dualist. I believe that there is one temporal existence, and upon death, we become nothing. But to me, and he references Spinoza, who thought differently as early as 1650. He seems to be struggling, and that to me humanizes him. That to me says, I may be a man of medicine, but I cannot, in my delivery and my comportment, say, I 100% believe this to be the case. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Science is a method of inquiry. Science is not about finding answers. Science is about asking the right questions. All the answers of science are false and will always be false. That's why science constantly improves upon itself. That's why we no longer adhere to theories which were, the best of trade. Or
best of trade, I love that.
Or the state of the art in the 17th century or the 18th century. They're no longer valid, yet they were highly scientific at the time. The belief that science is about coming up with life and so on is a complete misunderstanding of science. The process of science is querying the universe in a way which would tantalizingly provide temporary answers, which would then be disproved. This is not Sam Vaknin. This is Karl Popper, who came up with the idea of falsifiability. He said that scientific theories cannot be verified. They can only be falsified. And he's right, of course. And so whatever it is that Newton has said is still valid, but there is a theory which is much more valid, which is Einstein's, which will be 100% falsified in 100 years' time.
You think so?
No doubt about this. Not the beginning of a doubt about this. It's already partially falsified by quantum
Which
mechanics.
theory are you speaking of? Are you thinking of the theory of relativity? What are you thinking of?
Yeah, his theories, all his theory. There's no scientific theory that survives the test of time. Science is a succession of falsehoods. not a succession of truth or facts. It's a common mistake. Laymen think this way. Laymen say, oh, science is going to give us the answer. No way. However, science can teach you what questions to ask and which questions are not legitimate. So science is about legitimizing discourse and delegitimizing other forms of discourse. Science is about language, not about reality.
I love that you're saying this, because I feel that we as lay people, no matter how much we read or how much we listen to minds such as yourself, the message we get from the scientific establishment and anybody who's had dealings with the medical establishment, 99% of the time you're going to be dealing with someone who says, I know best. This is factual. This is settled science. Settled science.
Yeah.
And we live in an age right now where questions are being asked, and people who are asking questions are being told, you're an idiot. This is settled science. You say not so.
Settled science is an oxymoron. There is no science that is ever settled, and the essence of science is to unsettle itself. The essence of the scientific method, scientific inquiry, and the scientific mind is to challenge, undermine, and falsify everything we think we know. This is not Wikipedia. This is not crowdsourcing. So, no, we are never going to end up with a stable article, as Wikipedians call it. We're never going to have a stable article. But I want to, with your permission, because I was beginning to explain the psychological underpinnings of the pursuit of the paranormal, but I want to kind of revert to something you have raised. Arthur C. Clarke, the famous author, science fiction.
Yes, 2001.
An inventor, by the way.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he invented the satellite, among other things.
Really?
So Arthur C. Clarke said that a science which is sufficiently advanced would be indistinguishable from magic. And that is a very astute observation. It means that what we consider today to be the paranormal may well be 100 years' time. Maybe not all of it, but a sliver of it, a fraction of it, will, with absolute certainty, become science in due time. It is just that our science is imperfect and reflects our limitations right now. And to assume otherwise is hubris, it's grandiose. The paranormal is a set of experiences. And we are confusing the question of validity. While it is legitimate to challenge the objective external existence or external validity of these experiences. For example, it's legitimate to say ghosts don't exist. Experience of having seen a ghost. That is a valid, real life phenomenon. So the paranormal is real. The only question is, where is it taking place? Out there or in here? But it's absolutely real as this table or this laptop or whatever.
You know,
so there's this question of magic versus science.
Yeah, no, I love your marrying of that. Yeah, go on.
Maybe one more comment and then a suggestion. The next comment I want to make, and I'll try to be as brief and as colloquial as I can. The next comment I would like to make is that there are some questions, the answers to which we are never going to find, because in principle, these questions are unanswerable. And they're known in mathematics as undecidable propositions or undecidable theorems. Let me give you two examples of such questions and why it is a colossal waste of time to discuss them even. Does God exist? And the other question is, what is consciousness? These are the kind of questions that in principle cannot be answered. Therefore, any discussion of these questions is non-scientific. That means that science, the ability of science to generate temporary false answers, mind you, we call them asymptotic answers. The ability to generate these kind of answers is highly limited. There are things that science cannot query, cannot help us with. The meaning of life. Does God exist? What is consciousness? Is it real? You know, these are questions science can never in principle answer. So these are undecidables. I would like to inject an idea into the conversation. There is something called misattribution of arousal. Misattribution of arousal is a psychological phenomenon where something is happening in your body. For example, your blood pressure goes up, or your heartbeat accelerates, develop tachycardia, and so on. And then you are kind of asking yourself unconsciously, why is this happening to me? And you come up with an answer. And the answer is often wrong. We have conducted experiments with the classical guinea pigs of psychology, college students, and we induced in them a speedy heartbeat. We gave them illicit substances without their knowledge. Horrible things are happening.
Exciting.
Or horrible things are happening in psychology lab. Don't ask. And so they had like an increase in blood pressure and heartbeat and so on and so forth. And obviously they were not aware that they've consumed a substance which made this happen. So they came up with an explanation. When we asked them, why do you feel this way? They said, I think I'm falling in love. They were presented with photographs of appealing young women. They said, I think I'm falling in love. Or I'm finding her attractive, I'm aroused, and so on. Nothing to do with it. It's a misattribution of arousal. I think this is an excellent explanation for the paranormal, because we know that the paranormal observations and experiences are intimately linked to grief, loneliness, stress, tension, anxiety, a preceding traumatic event, abuse, and so on. In all these situations, suddenly people experience paranormal phenomena. Anything from telepathy to remote viewing to ghosts, I mean, you name it. They're all associated with kind of stress. Even when we study such phenomena in the laboratory, that's a stressful situation. There are expectations of performance, there is the unknown, and so on. I think all these situations involve physiological arousal that is then misattributed to paranormal phenomena. People ask themselves, why is this happening to me? Why is my heart pounding in my ears, and why is my face flushed, and so on? And they say, it's because something paranormal is happening to me. I know my mother died. I just know it,
Okay. I've got a couple of questions for you with this new turn the conversation's taken, which I love. Misattribution of arousal, this experiment in which I'm not saying you, in which college students were given without their knowledge drugs which increase their blood pressure, heart rate, what have you. Would you not say that that is not giving the subject all of the information? Because without the knowledge of that drug in their system, what are they to do but react to stimuli that is deliberately placed in front of them and attribute that physiological reaction? Number one. Number two, my question would be, is there an argument to be made that when a human being is in a state of crisis, perhaps the veil between our temporal world and what may be beyond our earthly knowledge somehow reveals itself? And thirdly, what do you make of, just curious as to your own suppositions, of those who would be in otherwise a state of rest? There are records of this all over the world, where an individual wakes up out of a dead sleep at the moment that a loved one has died. Could be thousands of miles away. You take it.
I'll start with the third one. Coincidences happen, of course.
Those would be a lot of coincidences, though.
Not a lot, actually.
You don't think so?
If you look at the numbers, it's not a lot.
But the reported ones.
We don't have millions of documented cases or billions.
Documented. That, I think, is the key word. I'm just going to push back a little bit.
Even if we have missed a few, I don't think that's a widespread phenomenon.
Okay.
And it's definitely within the confines of statistical random probability. Definitely. Regarding the second question, I agree with you that the brain needs to be in an unusual state. So does Oliver Sacks, by the way. So does Christopher Hitchens.
We'll get to him in 1 second. Yep.
We all agree with you that the brain needs to be in an aroused state, in an unusual state, in order to experience paranormal phenomena. The difference between me and Hitchens and Sachs and others is that it is wrong to say, I think it is wrong to say that paranormal phenomena do not exist. They absolutely 100,000% exist. I have no doubt about this, because they're being reported by people. That makes them real. The only question then is, do they happen outside the body or do they happen inside the body? Are they brain artifacts or are they real objective things that are happening in reality? And there is a way to rephrase this. If we remove the observer, would we still have a ghost? That's the way to look at it. Someone who has seen a ghost, if we remove the observer, would we still have a ghost? We have a similar question in quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, we have a dominant school of interpretation known as the Copenhagen interpretation. I'm a physicist, by the way. I have a PhD in physics. So the Copenhagen interpretation says that it is the observer that determines whether a certain particle comes into existence or not. And then the question becomes, if we were to remove the observer, would the particle ever come into existence?
Is this a version of if a tree falls, Sam? The philosophical question?
It's if a tree falls, or one
And nobody's there to see it, did it fall?
Yeah. So, yeah, in a way, what is the role of the observer? Let's put it this way. I think what is good for the gander is good for the goose. What's good for quantum mechanics should be good for the paranormal, studies of the paranormal, the dependency on the observer. It's in science. It's already in science. We can't rebottle the genie. The genie is out. And now in physics, we're having debates which sound a lot like the debates spiritualist societies used to have in the 19th century. A lot. Metaphysical debates. And one of them is, what's the role of the observer? And so, for example, in the 19th century, there was a concept of ectoplasm, where the observer was able to manifest a deceased person, a ghost, a spirit, manifest the spirit, convert it into visible energy. And that was called ectoplasm. That's not much different to the basic interpretation of quantum mechanics, that the observer creates the world, in essence, creates elementary particles. I don't subscribe to the Copenhagen interpretation, let it be clear. I completely disagree with it. But it's the dominant school. That's the orthodoxy. It's the mainstream. So I think that if we go back to the basics of psychology, Sigmund Freud described something that he called oceanic feeling. He said, he and many others, Anna Freud, Mahler, I can give you a long list, they suggested that the infant is immersed in a symbiotic phase, a kind of merger and fusion with the mother. And the infant exits the physical womb when the infant is newborn, but exits the mental womb only 2 years later.
Really?
It takes the infant another 2 years to exit the symbiosis with the mother and to individuate, to separate and individuate. That is how a certain school of psychology looks at it. And so I think there's a lot of it in the paranormal. I think people need to go back to the womb. They need this oceanic feeling of connectedness, of being one with others, being one with reality, being one with the universe. There's a need to merge and to fuse. There's a need for symbiosis, because when you're in a symbiotic state, all your needs are taken care of. There is the afterlife, because if you're part of the universe and the universe is part of you, if you are inextricable, if you're indistinguishable, you're one and the same, then you will never die, obviously. You will never die. And so there's the afterlife. There's a lot of comfort. It's a form of self-soothing. And it makes you feel very safe. It affords a narrative stability. And it renders your life a lot more meaningful even I would say to some extent grandiosely meaningful, because you are part of a cosmic scheme and the cosmic fabric. So I think it has a lot to do with this oceanic feeling. So you are predestined or preconditioned to experience paranormal phenomena, then you experience a state of arousal, and you misattribute it to the paranormal. That's how I see it. It's
Yeah.
a trigger.
Yeah, so this is before we play Christopher Hitchens, because I really want to talk to you about him, one of my all-time favorites. You're talking about the need to go back to the womb and to birth and the experience we all share. You know, in studying comparative religion, you know, all of the myths, all of the symbolism, it all lines up. And one of the theories regarding in Christianity and Judaism, the story of Noah's Ark, is that Noah's Ark is really, and similar myths in other religions, it's the collective unconscious of the trauma of being born. The Great Flood is the experience of being born, of exiting the birth canal in fluids and the afterbirth and all of that. What are your thoughts about that and how religion and either the paranormal or mysticism can converge or layer upon themselves?
It was Carl Sagan who suggested that near-death experiences are actually a re-experiencing of birth.
Really?
Yeah, he said, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel is the light at the end of the birth canal. Just people re-experiencing the birth. I think there's another trauma in life, very early in life, which is substantially more traumatic than being born.
Okay.
And that is the trauma of realizing that you and mother are not one. The trauma of the breaking of the world, the huge schism, when suddenly you realize that you're not one with mother and the world, that there is something out there which is not you, that you are separate from the world, that there's a boundary between you and the world, and that you're pretty helpless to do anything about it or about the world. The minute, as a newborn, as an infant, the minute you see yourself in your mother's gaze, that very minute you realize your separateness and externality, because her gaze is the outside world. You see yourself in it. Again, there was a guy called Lacan, a psychoanalyst.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. By the way, we are identical twins. Like he's my, we are like absolutely, you know. Anyhow, Lacan suggested what he called the mirror phase in human development. He said when the infant sees himself in the mirror or herself in the mirror, that's a major break, a major schism. I agree. Only I think it's not the mirror, not physical mirror, because in his work it's physical mirror. But we know that it would happen even in the absence of physical mirrors. I don't think it has anything to do with physical mirror. I think the first mirror is the mother. That's the first mirror. Mother, when I say mother, a caregiver, a maternal figure. Could be the father if the mother is not there. Yeah. So the person who is providing the gaze. And I think what happens at that moment, we divorce the world. The trauma is immense because then you experience a solipsistic, existential, all-consuming solitude, which cannot be remediated and cannot be soothed and comforted, and which is life-threatening. It's dramatically ominous. And you are 2 years old, 18 months to be precise. Like, what can you do about it? Not much. So what do? You develop superstition. You develop an alternative world. You develop paranormal beliefs. Fantasy, paracosm, imaginary friends. And in case the environment is abusive or truly traumatizing, you become a narcissist. You develop the false self. At any rate, you develop some kind of fantastic narrative that allows you the escape from reality, because reality has instantaneously become threatening through the mother's gaze and the information conveyed that you're all on your own. That's it. You're alone, all alone. And so I think we want to go back there. We want to go to the pre-traumatic phase. When we were one with mother and one with the world, it felt so safe.
Mother
It felt
Earth.
so good. Sorry?
Mother Earth. We talk about
Yes,
Mother
Mother
Earth.
Earth. There are many maternal metaphors, absolutely. And of course, paternal metaphors. I mean, that would be God or whatever. We want to
Sure.
go, we want to infantilize. We want to regress. We want back to the womb. And of course, the Latin word for womb is the matrix.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So we want to go to the matrix. And one way of reverting to the matrix is denying everything adult. And whatever else you have to say about science, and I agree with many of the criticisms. Definitely, I'm a harsh critic of scientism. But whatever else you say about science, it's definitely an adult pursuit. Because science rejects illusions, delusions, insists on randomness, on objectivity, on neutrality. You need to be a very strong person to never ever consider the possibility of a God. I'm proud to say I have never ever considered it.
Really?
I haven't felt the need for it. I haven't felt the need for it, ever.
Did
And
you
I've
grow
gone
up with any form of religion as a child? Or were your parents atheists?
Yeah, my parents were, well, they were on the verge of atheism, but they were kind of observant.
Okay. Jews?
But I never felt the need for a religion or for the paranormal. I never felt the need for anything except rationality and logic. But it takes a very strong personality to do that. I'm praising myself, of course. It's
Of course you are.
yeah.
Of course you are.
normally.
So to that point, I want to look at two clips of Christopher Hitchens. The first is he was dying famously of cancer, and he made it a point to give many interviews and write extensively about the experience of living while dying, as we all are. But Christopher knew his time was closer than most of us do. And one of the philosophical arguments he continued to make was that he was dying as he lived as an atheist, and that he considered it the province. Now, this is Hitchens himself, the province of a kind of a coward who would suddenly find God or find religion upon the diagnosis of a terminal illness. Let's look at this interview with NPR from 8 years ago, part one.
I'm here as a product of process of evolution, which doesn't make very many exceptions, and which rates life relatively cheaply. I mean, most human beings who've ever been born would have been dead long before they reached my age. And I would think in most of the rest of the world that, well, I know it's still true. So to have been relatively healthy till 62 is to have been dealt a pretty good hand by the cosmos, which doesn't know I'm here and won't notice when I'm gone. So that seemed the only properly stoic attitude to take.
Now he says, as you said at the earlier part of the conversation, talking about the universe and our conversation about this current vogue of the universe has brought you to this place you have manifested. Christopher Hitchens plainly says, the universe doesn't know I'm here. And extrapolating, even if it did, it would not care. And here next he goes into his, and I thought this was really smart, you know, on the face of it, you might say this is a harsh reaction. This is anger, misdirected anger at his own terminal diagnosis, directed towards those who say they are praying for him. And he says, I want to understand exactly why you are praying for me and what is the point. If you are praying for my illness to somehow heal itself, that is a wonderful wish. It's lovely. It's irrational, but that I can accept. If you are praying for another outcome, and he's going to outline it here, I reject it, and I kind of love it. Here we go.
Or a wish that I reconcile myself with the supernatural or the divine, which is a large part of it. I mean, I wrote back to some of the people, some of them in holy orders or running religious organizations. I said, when you say you're praying for me, do you mind if I ask what for? And a number of them said, quite honestly, not really for your recovery, but that you see the error of your ways.
That you find God.
Yeah. Now, I find that not as easy to be graceful about, because though it's put in a nice way, it's part of a phenomenon that I've always thought of as very disgusting, which is the belief of the religious that, which they keep expressing and have done for centuries, that surely now you're dying, your fears will overcome your reason. I hope I don't have to underline what's horrible about that. There's an element of blackmail to it. And an element also of tremendous insecurity, I think, on their part. I mean, they don't seem to feel they'd win the argument so easily with someone who was mentally and physically strong. By the way, I think they're right.
What's your reaction to that, Sam?
I don't berate people who are weak. I regard religion as a form of mental illness, but a mental illness that is adopted by people who as a last resort because they're weak. I don't think they're cowards. I don't regard what they're doing as coercive. I'm not angry at them. I understand that we are not all blessed with the kind of fortitude and resilience that allows us to not need anything except reality. And so he's an angry person. I highly respect him, of course, but he's an angry person. He's also a bit of an activist, or was a bit of an activist. Atheism, especially the strong form of atheism, is a religion.
Agreed.
Because it makes a claim based on belief or on faith.
Agreed.
While I'm, for example, not an atheist at all. I'm an agnostic. Which is a
I
major.
love that. Yeah.
The agnostic says, I don't know, the question can never be answered. It's undecidable.
There's a
Linking
humility to that.
Exactly. I want to say that being a rational person or adhering to rationality implies modesty or humility. Not my strong suits, mind you. but
We would never know.
But when it comes to the intellect, I am humble. Intellectually, I am humble. I'm a very vain and narcissistic person, obviously, but otherwise, when it comes to the intellect, I am humble in the face of the universe, in the face of reality. I accept that the universe is indifferent, inexorable, random, uninterested in me. I don't apply to myself any privilege or special status. I don't think I can interact with the universe in any meaningful way whatsoever. I can query the universe, nor do I think that I will ever be able to obtain the correct answer, as opposed to vainglorious, hubristic scientists who are bad scientists. If you're vainglorious, if you have hubris, if you make absolute claims about your discoveries and about science, you're a seriously bad scientist. Science is a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's not a practice. And one of the major problems with scientists is that they conflate and confuse science with technology. Technology does provide answers. And these answers are always true. How do I know? The technology works. But science never provides true answers. And science and technology are not the same things. You can convert science to technology, and is often done, but they're not the same thing. They're not commensurate. They're not coextant. You could practice science that can never ever be converted to technology. And you could come up with technological inventions even if you're a college dropout and you've never studied science. These are not the same things. And yet scientists conflate them, confuse them and say, you see, science works. No, science always fails. Technology works. And they're not the same thing. Therefore, to settle the question of the alleged paranormal phenomena, their objectivity, for example, their existence in reality, is not something that science can declare on. It's not something that science can answer right now. We need to be humble in the face of the diversity of reality. We need to really be humble. That is not to say that telepathy exists, or clairvoyance, or or ghosts exist. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is people have been reporting these phenomena. We need to study them. They are as real as any smartphone, more real even. They preceded the smartphone, you know. And that's where science, the hubris of science, and scientism, in my view, retard the scientific endeavor, because they say, no, we don't need to study this phenomenon. They are the equivalent of declaring that the moon is made of green cheese. No, they are not the equivalent of such a statement. They're not. Because to say that the moon is made of green cheese is a counterfactual statement that is not based on a single experience. No one has visited the moon and came back with green cheese. Unfortunately, I like it. But to say that you have seen a ghost is a qualitatively different kind of statement. Assuming, of course, that you're not a fraudster and you're not, you know,
Right.
that you are. So it's a qualitatively different statement because it does report something about reality. It could be a single individual's reality. It could reflect a brain abnormality, misattributed arousal. I don't know. I don't know what it could reflect because no one studies it, is studying it. And no one is studying it because it's taboo. Princeton closed down its laboratory in 2007.
Really?
Yeah, in 2007. And that's it. There is no other, to the best of my knowledge, there is no other serious academic institution of higher education that is studying these millions of reports by people in all cultures, in all periods, in all societies, in all continents, of essentially identical phenomena. And that is shocking, to exclude such a vast forest of experiences just because it's green cheese.
Or because, again, there is a lack of humility. There's an intellectual snobbery there. What we're talking about is something that has been part of the human experience since humans were able to document human experience. And to excise that as a valid, inexplicable part simply because we cannot answer the question, to me, makes it one of the most tantalizing questions there is. That is a field of study I think any academic could chew on for the rest of their living days.
Yes, and the irony is, I do think we can provide a temporary answer. I don't think I proposed a few answers in this podcast. They may be the wrong answers, they probably are. But I did attempt at least to provide answers, you know, arousal, misattributed arousal, these need to be studied. If I suggest a hypothesis that it's misattributed arousal, we need to check that. We can put people in laboratory conditions, people who claim, for example, to be able to talk to ghosts, mediums. We can put people who claim to have experienced telepathy or able to turn on and off telepathy at will. There are such people, and so on. And we can then test their physiology for signs of arousal. Again,
With the best of our knowledge thus far, and the best of our technology thus far.
And we do have technology. For example, fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, should demonstrate if there is unusual activity in the brain.
But that will only prove, as far as we are able to right now, that there is unusual activity in the brain. We know about as much about the human brain as we do about the vastness of the ocean and what goes on beneath.
Well, we did this with meditation. By now,
Yes, that's true. That's true.
By now, it's well established, and it's part of mainstream to say that meditation induces changes in brain activity and in the long term, even brain structures, pathways, and so on. So we've done that with meditation. And there was a long period where even this has been resisted. People were saying meditation, that's con artistry. We should
that's New Age BS,
New Age BS, and we should never study this, a waste of time, resources, and so on.
And by the way, a thousands of year old practice.
Yes, and now we are discovering, and that's established, that's mainstream. We teach it in university.
Yes.
Now we know that definitely we can use meditation to alter specific activities in the brain and so on and so forth, even physiological responses such as heartbeat and reduced blood pressure and so on and so forth. So we know that meditation can be beneficial, and we've missed out on it for like 60 years. because we absolutely refuse to study the phenomenon because it came from the East. And yogis don't look like academics, most yogis don't look like academics, and they sit very strangely and they contort. That's
To Westerners.
yes,
Yes.
yes. So, I think we need to be more humble. I think we do need to study what is today called paranormal phenomenon. Maybe the phrases are unfortunate, paranormal, supernatural, this, that. These are reports by millions of people about something that is undoubtedly happening. Same applies to UFOs. There are reports by hundreds of thousands of people about something that may be happening. My inclination is to believe that these are brain artifacts, that this reflects some problems with processing and so on. That's my inclination. I do not believe in the existence of ghosts or UFOs, not even remotely.
Fascinating.
But I may be wrong. I may be right.
Well, you and I should pick up UFOs after we talk to some I'm fascinated. There's a documentary coming out, but by ex-military fighter pilots, people who have been trained to the teeth, ultra rationalists, understand physics, aerodynamics. As you said, these reports we saw aircraft that could not be human made. It's wild stuff. It used to be the province of conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hats, and now it's part of real sophisticated discussion. And I love it. It just makes life more interesting.
Needs to be studied. We should never, ever exclude anything human from study. There was a Roman saying, nothing human is alien to me. We should expand science to include everything humans report, everything humans observe, everything humans can measure, everything they cannot measure. We should expand science this way because only then we will become cognizant of the boundaries and limitations of science. As long as we pretend that science has all the answers for everything and that when science does not have an answer, there is no question, then of course we will have failed. Science, through the pursuit and through the study of other realms and other, territories, science may come to realize its own limitations and boundaries and thereby rendered much more efficacious. But right now scientists say, if we cannot answer this, then the question itself is not legitimate. Mm-hmm. And that is a misinterpretation of the scientific spirit.
And I think anti-intellectual.
When people first came up with quantum mechanics, Bohr, Born, all these scientists, Einstein rejected quantum mechanics. Although he was the philosophical and mathematical and physical father of quantum mechanics, he disowned his intellectual progeny. He rejected quantum mechanics. And he said, I can't believe this is true. I can't believe this is true because God wouldn't be playing dice. And he rejected quantum mechanics and he excluded it from his studies. Consequently, Einstein spent the last 40 years of his life pursuing nonsensical theories that led nowhere.
Wow.
And he wasted the greatest genius that has ever walked the earth. He wasted his brain. He wasted his mind because he would not countenance another theory which to him appeared to be a kind of paranormal or supernatural theory because it implied action at a distance. It implied all kinds of things which he absolutely considered non-scientific. So Einstein said, if they come up with these ideas and these ideas are non-scientific, the ideas are not legitimate and the very query and quest are not legitimate and I'm not going to participate. What did he do except ruin himself as a scientist? Today we know that quantum mechanics is by far the most precise scientific theory to have ever walked the earth. We have no idea what it means or what it says. None. But it works. And so there are many debates and so on, and they're highly metaphysical debates. But it's a theory that works.
Well,
And
I can think of no better object lesson and sort of place to leave it as that, because that really, I think, is the heart of the conversation we have been having. We don't know how it works, but it works. And we don't know how some of these phenomena can possibly be explained, but they're there. And so we need to inquire within.
let me finish with a sentence.
Yes, please.
The worst way to tackle or consider a problem is to deny that it exists. That's the least efficacious way of dealing with it. And that's precisely what we're doing today with the paranormal. We deny that it exists. But it exists. Of course it exists. Not in the real objective sense, but in people's experiences.
Thank you, Sam. And
you.
I don't know if they celebrate Halloween over in France, but happy Halloween.
They
and
do.
happy All Souls Day. See, it transcends cultures. It's
Yes,
human.
it
It's
does.
human.
It does.
Thank you, Sam. And we will see you soon back on the Nerve.
Thank you
Enjoy
for having me.
Paris.
Take care.